Do you want to make a juicy and tender brisket just like this one? Let me show you how it's done.
A big thanks to borniak smokers for sponsoring this video.
It's been over a year that I created the 4-2-10 method, and I've seen it pop up everywhere. And I think it helped a lot of beginners create their first brisket in a successful way. When I created the method, I based it on Steve Gao, his method of cooking a brisket. However, there's some downsides to the 4-2-10 method, and I'm going to show you how to fix them. So I picked up a brisket, and this one came pre-trimmed, and it kind of makes for an interesting brisket because it has a lot of intramuscular fat, so it's going to be an easier brisket to cook. But this brisket also takes me to the point where we run into our first problem, because this brisket, it weighs 3.5 kilograms, which is around 7 pounds. Now that is a small brisket. Normally, if you buy a whole packer brisket, they're double the size. And this is where the 4-2-10 method lacks a little bit of nuance. Because if you cook a big piece of meat, it takes longer to cook. And so the smaller brisket, like this, will cook faster. And then the 4 and 2 hour rules might not apply. I've taken my brisket out of the package, and we can see that I have a little bit of fat cap sitting right here. Nice and thin cut off, so that's going to render down nice. At the bottom, we got it nice and cleaned up. We got a little cut here, which is a shame, but you can always have that. So all in all, it looks like a pretty decent brisket. It's got a good amount of intramuscular fat, which means we have a good chance at successfully making a juicy, tender brisket. And I'm going to season it with the PITMASTERX beef seasoning. Now, of course, it's in the shop down below in this video. You can pick it up in our online store. I'm just gonna go from above and shake from as high as possible. You get less waste that way. I'm gonna make this brisket look good, but I'm also gonna need the sides to be seasoned. I'm gonna flip this brisket around and season the other side. And this brisket now looks absolutely perfect. I'm gonna let this brisket sit on the countertop while it soaks up the flavors of our seasoning. And in the meantime, we're gonna prepare the borniak. The borniak smoker is one of my favorite smokers because it's a precision smoker. It's an electric smoker that uses actual wood to create smoke, but it heats up the barbecue with an electric coil. And therefore I'm able to hit it exactly right. All I need to do is turn it on, set the temperature, and we're going to be smoking at a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. And then we're going to go in here. This is the smoke hopper. I'm just going to get some smoke wood, put it in the hopper. For brisket, I like a little bit more smoke wood. And switch it on, and now this is going to create smoke. So I've got heat, smoke. I'm going to put in my brisket, just slide it in, close the door, and now we're going to wait. Not for 4 hours, but we're going to check the color. The brisket has been smoking for 3 hours now, and now it looks like this. And more importantly, I check with my thermometer to see how far along we are. And currently we have a core temperature of 70 degrees Celsius. And that is normally the time that I take into consideration, because after 70 degrees Celsius the meat doesn't take any more smoke flavor on inside the meat, so we're only packing it on the outside. And that means this might be a good time to wrap. And you see, that's where we differentiate from the 4 hours. If you have a big brisket that weighs 7 kilograms, which is around 14 pounds, then you have a huge piece of meat, and that 4 hours is definitely needed to even get it up to that temperature. Now we're already there with this smaller one, and you see that there's an hour difference between those. Another difference is that now comes the 2 hour phase. And the 2 hour phase is to remove any puddling on the brisket. Because in general you smoke a brisket on an offset smoker with the fat side sitting on top. But if you're smoking your brisket on a barbecue like this, where the heat comes from down below, or a ceramic grill where also the heat comes from, or a kettle grill, or loads of other grills, you point the fat towards the heat to protect it. And that means you're going to have a bowl, like a dome shape on top of the brisket. And therefore there will be no puddling. So it makes no sense to smoke this brisket at a higher temperature for 2 hours to get that puddle to disappear, to evaporate. Now, if this would have been... See, I'm not a stressful person, but this stresses me out. the end of my, oh, I almost hit myself in the head. See, this is what happens at the end of my aluminum foil. It's like a bad omen. Don't like that. If I would have used the 4-2-10 method, I would now have been in a position where I need to raise up the temperature and therefore attacking the meat and the moisture inside the brisket even more. Well, actually with this smoker, you shouldn't be doing that. Now in this case, I've got a nice bark. I got a brisket that has been taken on all of the smoke flavor that it possibly can. So will it taste better if I leave it on just to keep smoking? No, it won't. It will just put more smoke flavor on the outside. But what you have to keep in mind is that a smoker like this gives the brisket more smoke flavor than an offset smoker. Even if you have that dark bark on the outside of the offset smoker, it's still a lighter flavor profile than with a smoker like this. Now, of course, you can switch this off, but we still do like a bit of color. So that's why I'm wrapping it earlier than I would with an offset smoker. Now, the same thing applies for your ceramic grill. You're gonna wrap a lot faster than with an offset smoker. I'm gonna roll this up. I still have the fat side down. And this can now go back on the barbecue until the core temperature hits 92 degrees Celsius. Or at least it's on its way. But I'll explain later. So yeah, well, nobody knows how long that's going to take. It's not going to be 2 hours. Could be 2 hours. Could be more. Could be less. I'm going to keep it at 120 degrees Celsius. I'm just going to let it run. No need to raise up the temperature or any alarm bells. All right, listen up. If you're cooking on a kettle grill, you have heat coming from the side. If you're cooking on a ceramic barbecue, you have heat coming from the bottom. If you're cooking from the borniak smoker like this, you have heat coming from the bottom. If you're cooking on an offset smoker, you have heat coming from above. Now, with the ceramic grill, it's going to be more radiation heat. With an offset smoker, it's going to be convection heat. With this borniak smoker, it's also going to be convection heat. And with kettle grills, it's going to be a little bit of both. And therein lies the problem. You cannot say the 4-2-10 brisket method is the perfect method for every brisket on every barbecue. It's just a good general rule of thumb to apply to a brisket so you get started. It's been 5 hours since we started cooking this brisket, and I now can measure a core temperature of 91.5, and normally I smoke until a core temperature of 92 degrees Celsius. Now, if we think about the 4-2-10 brisket method, we're not looking at temperature, we're just looking at time. So it's 4 hours of smoking at 120 degrees Celsius, then smoking for 2 hours at 140 degrees Celsius, and then 10 hours of resting. But what I'm showing you here is that my cook is done in 5 hours. Now, of course, that includes the fact that I'm cooking it in aluminum foil at the moment, which is going to fast track this process. So it means we need to get it off right now. As a matter of fact, right now, because at the moment I have the temperature right, and oh, look at, whoa, at all those juices. That is absolutely gorgeous. You see, cooking a brisket in a smoker like this requires a different technique, but the outcome is going to be perfect. Temperature-wise, I got it the way I wanted to, but if I probe it with my thermometer, it doesn't feel super soft everywhere. And normally I just want that thermometer probe to go through like it were butter, which I don't get at the moment. So, therefore is the 10-hour resting period. Now I'm going to let this brisket breathe a little bit, get some of that heat out, let it slowly come up to temperature, then we're going to wrap it back up and let it rest at a temperature of 60 degrees Celsius for at least 2 hours and up to 10 hours. And I'm even going to take this overnight. Well, I guess good morning. It's not like it's Franklin barbecue and we have a line standing here. No, it's not. Just a second. Resting for so many hours. Then this is the way I love to do it, because that overnight just makes me feel like I'm playing brisket restaurant in my backyard. Juices are already running. It is beef, it is barbecue spices. Wow. That looks so freaking amazing. Look at that. It is hot, but still not too hot. Let's check the other side. This is the fat cap side. Wow, this looks freaking good.
moment of truth. Wow. Like butter. Look at that. Wow. That looks so good. You see, this is the reason why you shouldn't use the 4-2-10 method, because it can always be better. Look at the fat render on this brisket. It's just all of the fat rendered out, making this brisket extremely juicy. It has a little pull, but it just is real nice. This is so good. Wow. Brisket for breakfast. The most important reason why I wanted to make this video is to show you that there is a good rule of thumb to start from. Like cooking a brisket 4-2-10 helps you get started in the brisket game. But when you've done 1 or 2 briskets, you might want to step up your game. You see, that's very important to fine-tune your brisket to the barbecue and get it absolutely perfect.